Hello, we are live. Happy Thursday, everybody. Happy almost long weekend, Brian. How
I
are you?
I know I keep forgetting. It's a long weekend. It's a holiday. It's
Mm.
exciting.
So you are up in Canada. So maybe do they celebrate Labor Day up there, or is that a US holiday?
I think that's a US thing. So,
Okay. So we'll give you the day off on Monday.
great.
Well, welcome, guys. Welcome. I'm super excited to have this chat today. This chat's going to work a little differently than our usual, where we kind of have that banter that you guys love. Brian's going to interview me. So, thought leadership is a topic near and dear to my heart that we'll dive into. But I do a lot of research, a lot of studying of the algorithm on thought leadership on LinkedIn. So we thought it would just be easiest if we kind of made it more of a Q&A style. So anything to intro Brian before you hit me with the questions?
I think we should just start diving right into it,
Love
since you
it.
are the thought leader on thought leadership.
No, sounds so silly. And guys, put your questions in the chat. An insider secret that we're going to share with you is a lot of times the LinkedIn lives, due to scheduling and whatnot, are actually pre-recorded. But today we are actually live. So I would love to have some questions. So please drop those questions in the comments. And if you are watching this afterwards, drop them out. Drop them afterwards, and we'll be sure to respond to them in real time.
You told them our secret, Lauren.
I know.
That's my other secret. My first secret's that I'm always angry. No, that's the Avengers. Sorry. Um, okay. All right. So let's start it off. So thought leadership. So Lauren, I want to start with this. What is thought leadership? What does it look like? And what is it not? Because I think there are a lot of things out there in the internet space that pass as thought leadership or are referred to as thought leadership content, but maybe stretching the term a little bit. So could you get into a little bit what it really is?
Yeah, it's like lipstick on a pig. No, I mean, just because something is identified as thought leadership and it's not really, doesn't mean it's bad content, just means it's not identified correctly. So, thought leadership content, in the most traditional sense, is typically like a long form report that has been put together either by one specific kind of expert or a team of experts, and it's kind of that interface of research and data, like what they've learned from their experience, their opinion on the matter, kind of, their point of view, where they think things are going, what needs to happen, combined with storytelling and kind of real life examples. So that's really what traditional thought leadership looks like. I've been in the life science industry for almost 2 decades. And the term thought leadership has been around in that industry long before it was cool and long before it was on LinkedIn. So if you asked me this question about 10 years ago or so, that would have been my answer. That kind of, those long form reports, the kind of interface of data, opinion, advice, almost kind of leading documents that help drive the industry forward. And, I'm talking about my industry, but it doesn't have to be my industry. It can be any industry. Now, thought leadership has kind of evolved, and it could be everything from video to the long form content to just LinkedIn posts. We've evolved in that sense. However, in the process of evolution, there's kind of been some iterations in people's minds of what thought leadership is. And I think it has been sometimes people disguise marketing materials as thought leadership. And thought leadership really, at the end of the day, isn't trying to sell you anything. The goal is to get you talking, to get you thinking, to demonstrate that you or your organization is a leader in this field. And that's, maybe that will lead to sales down the line, but that's not really the point. The point is to drive innovation, accelerate the industry. And marketing content at the end of the day is about marketing, bringing people in the door. And that's really the difference in my mind. But also, I think when you read a marketing document that's labeled as thought leadership, maybe it still is, in essence, thought leadership, but the call to action isn't less about getting you thinking. It's about downloading more. It's about getting to, on a call. And if that's the kind of like essence that people are leaving with, and they're feeling like that was the only reason you brought them into the conversation, that's marketing fluff, it's just mislabeled. But then again, there are things that are just so incorrectly disguised as thought leadership that aren't even remotely thought leadership. There are things like, just marketing one-pagers and case studies and, client testimonials and stuff like that. Those are all wonderful documents for an organization to have and helpful, but it's not thought leadership. And this is a huge kind of like point in the industry that I'm in, especially because everybody calls themselves a thought leader these days. And we kind of joke like, not everybody is a thought leader. And that's what makes the difference, is that not everyone is a thought leader, and that's okay. You can put out thought leadership content, but that doesn't mean that you are an innovator, in the field. That doesn't mean that you are changing the conversation in your industry. It just means that you are putting out thought leadership content and maybe building your presence as a thought leader, but you're probably not there yet unless you are well published, well referenced. Those are like true thought leaders.
Yeah, I think you're really hitting on it when you talked about kind of the originality driving the industry forward is the real goal behind these pieces, and it displays an interest in something kind of even beyond just like whatever it is you're selling, your product or service, because that's when you kind of lapse back into just kind of standard old marketing fluff, as you
Exactly.
put it. So thank you for that awesome kind of introduction into what thought leadership is, how it differs from traditional marketing, where they kind of overlap, and how you can recognize the real signs of true, genuine thought leadership from kind of just run-of-the-mill marketing stuff.
Exactly.
So with that said, let's dig into a little bit about life sciences and healthcare specifically. How in this particular industry is thought leadership thought about? How is it used to build authority and influence in the industry? What makes it a little bit different in the life sciences, maybe versus somebody who's selling T-shirts? What is it about this industry?
If there is a thought leadership document on T-shirts, I would love to see it. So please put it in the comments. So yeah, as I said, the funny part, not funny, just the interesting part for me is that when I joined the industry about 15 years ago and I kind of learned about thought leadership and whatnot, it felt like this kind of next level content that, it just kind of felt like, that higher tier of content and organizations and people that were putting it out. So I think that's probably a little bit what the industry, why there's such this difference in how certain industries see thought leadership, and we're kind of bringing it more to the everyday level, is that in the past, thought leadership was really seen as these kind of innovators, these, researchers that have spent their life's work doing these things and building authority in a certain field. So I think that's one difference is, like kind of how it's viewed. I think it's viewed in the industry as really these kind of like ticking points in the whole grand scheme of the industry. Those, people that are, game changers like George Church and, Bill Gates and all those people, I'm just spewing out names, and there's so many beautiful, wonderful people in the industry. But those are people that are like, you think of when you think of like innovation in technology and life science and whatnot. So I think that one piece of it is, where does the thought leadership stand? Like, where is it positioned, basically? Is it that next tier content that is driving the industry forward, or is it simply content for a company to put out there to showcase their expertise and to bring awareness? It can be both of those things for sure, but I think in the life science, healthcare, even technology ecosystem, that thought leadership is really seen as that like needle moving content versus just driving awareness.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that even in like in the SEO industry, there are certain people who I think about that are like leaders in the industry who like
Exactly.
anytime they publish something, I have to read it because I know it's going to be something new or insightful or different than all the other stuff I see.
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit more about how that kind of builds authority and credibility in the industry and how that can help you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, with thought leadership, you aren't necessarily just coming up with an idea and doing the research and whatnot. The idea, you're basing your strategy and your idea on the work that you're already doing. It kind of naturally comes to you. That's kind of one difference that I see is, for example, we work with IQVIA, and we work with their thought leadership division, and the content that they're coming up with is based on all of the research that IQVIA is doing in clinical trials with healthcare clients and whatnot. So the topics are naturally aligned with the research they're doing. So I think that's one piece of it, is that it shouldn't just be something that you're thinking of out of thin air. It should be something that aligns with the research and the work that you're doing. And it should be something that you're kind of seeing too as you are doing your research and talking to people. And, you're kind of realizing like, wow, this is a pattern. We're seeing this, or this is what people are talking about. And we have that research back in the lab that we can address those questions in a report. So I think that for me is kind of the biggest piece of like thought leadership versus just like marketing content and building authority versus building awareness is you already have like kind of the knowledge and the research, and you are just simply putting it out there in a report form that drives conversation, that gets people thinking differently, that kind of gives an original opinion. So it almost feels exactly what you're saying, Brian, that people are like, oh yeah, Brian put out some SEO content. Of course I'm going to read it. And that's how certain thought leaders become known names, is because they put out these reports every year or regularly. If we think about my industry, McKinsey is a great example of somebody that puts out thought leadership content. I love their women's health report that they recently released this year and in previous years. So now I'm just always going to be looking for it because I know that is an area that they're experts in, that they have research in. So I've kind of established them in my mind as an authority in that regard. And that's ultimately how thought leadership can help elevate your credibility and your authority.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how you talk about how it kind of comes out of the research that you're already doing, that you're already kind of got your hands in, and that you're an expert in. So, with that said, can we shift a little bit now into the actual nitty gritty, the steps, the tactics that we actually need to like create a strategy around thought leadership? How do we actually create the content itself? How do we get it out there? Can we talk about the actual, concrete action steps that we can take here?
Yeah, you just hire Lauren Pernicom. I'm totally kidding, guys.
End of show.
I'm absolutely kidding. Yes, we have done white papers, case studies, thought leadership content across the spectrum. So I will kind of talk about how we tackle, a thought leadership piece. And everyone's strategy is a little different. Everyone kind of approaches it a little bit differently. But here's just kind of that 50,000 foot overview, how, you generally kind of want to approach it. So I think it is a little bit of the chicken and the egg, what do you have first? Obviously I'm telling you that in general, you should already have somewhat of an idea of what you want to talk about. You are bringing the content forward based on like what you're talking about, what your clients are talking about, what the industry is talking about. Sometimes you already have that data and you're ready to go and you've found a topic and you are like, yes, this is what we are writing about. But sometimes you have like the research first and you're trying to figure out what type of what direction do we want to go in. So we've done kind of both. When you have the research and not the full idea yet, I think sometimes it can take a little bit more back and forth because you're kind of going through the process of figuring out what the research means. You're interviewing people, you're kind of talking it through with various stakeholders. So it all depends on kind of where what you have, but generally you either have the research or the idea, and then it's up to you to figure out how to get the rest. But again, that's kind of where the writer comes in and the whole, content team comes in to help you with that. So once you've kind of decided, okay, I have this idea or I have this research, then you want to build in time to speak with stakeholders. You want to interview everybody across the spectrum. In our world, it might be patients, researchers, advocates, business development folks. It just, you really want to hit the spectrum of people that are involved in this topic. And then once you have the interviews complete, and you have, you've kind of synthesized your data, that's when you can kind of put them all together and, look at like, what are the people saying? What does the data say? And come up with an outline, come up with ideas of where the discussion could go. Again, this kind of all depends on like how much you already have. So just really talking in the most broadest strokes, but once you've kind of synthesized the data and organized the kind of stakeholder, kind of more qualitative discussions, then you can come up with an outline. You can work with your stakeholders to figure out, or, your kind of internal content team to figure out, okay, what's missing? What do we need more of? What do we need less of? What direction do we want to go in? Scrap that entire thing and start over. It happens. Brian and I know we've been there. And then once you kind of have a good structure and outline, you can begin writing. And then once, as you're writing, you're also in tandem thinking of all the other ways that you can promote this. Is there a press release that needs to go out? Are there social media posts? Is there maybe a blog that you want to put out? If this is a video, is there a companion piece that you can put out? If you go to the McKinsey report that I was talking about, one of the reasons that I love it so much is because there's all these little sub blogs and videos and stuff like that. So, I'm talking in terms of, you're having one kind of solid piece and then everything's an offshoot from there. Usually the main piece is a report, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be a video or whatnot. But either way, you're having these kind of offshoots to really drive traffic and encourage discourse. And then, once you're done creating your first draft, you redo it a million times. Then you hand it in, and then you redo it 10 more times. And then, from there, you can decide if you want to submit to publications or if you want it to just live on your website and drive people there through press releases. It's really, that kind of strategy is up to you and what your company feels most aligned with. But, you definitely have to promote it across channels for sure.
Yeah, it does have that similarity to the way in content marketing you might repurpose a piece of long form content into a bunch of shorter pieces across different channels. But in this case, you're taking your main thought leadership asset, your report or your video or whatnot, kind of doing a similar idea, taking pieces and components and cross-purposing it across different channels. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool.
And that's probably where some of the confusion comes in with marketing content versus thought leadership, because at the end of the day, thought leadership really is part of content marketing. It is just treated differently than a blog or what's.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have come up with our research. We have created our drafts. We've edited it 25 times, and now we've put it out there. We got it across all our channels. How do we know if it's a success? What do we do?
Yeah, so just like any other piece of content, you're going to measure it. You're going to be checking the analytics. In today's world, I think one of the most important places to check is the comments. If you're putting it on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatnot, even if you have it on your website, there's a spot for comments usually. So checking what are people saying about it. You also want to be tracking it through Google alerts and whatever kind of, tracking software you use. Is it being referenced in the news? Are people referencing it in their own research? That's really ultimately a sign of authority, is when people use your research as their citations and their references. But of course, just also really tracking the analytics on your website, on social media, it's not just about how many likes or, it's how many people are actually downloading the full report, how many people are sharing it, how many people are commenting, what are the comments saying? It's not just about the, kind of surface level metrics, what are people saying about it? Are they interested in what you're talking about? And hopefully, because remember, before you did any of this, the reason you're even putting this out is because you've been talking to people and getting ideas and kind of noodling over things. And that's when you come to the point where you're like, hey, I want to write something. So hopefully you've hit the mark. And you know what? And honestly, people are, for any sort of research driven reports or, content, people are always going to comment. What you're looking for is that kind of insightful conversation.
Yeah, I think it's really great that you pointed out, don't just dig into the numbers, but dig into the qualitative too, to see what people are really saying about it, what the sentiment is around it and all that. I think that's super important. So thank you for shining a light on that, Lauren.
Yeah.
Well, we got through the major topics we wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to say to kind of sum it up, or to a last thought you want to leave people with on thought leadership?
Yeah, I think the one thing that you're hearing a lot lately is, like, what is thought leadership? Who is a thought leader? This kind of dichotomy of people feeling like, anyone can put out thought leadership content, or, on the other side, there's only a few like true thought leaders in the world. Um, don't even worry about the noise. Just focus on putting out content that is that kind of at that interface of your experience and your expertise and your opinion. Um, and with the goal of driving conversation, sharing a new point of view, and just demonstrating that you are an authority, you are a credible source in your industry. So I wouldn't worry too much about what the label is, or if you are specifically going to be a thought leader or your company. Um, Put that thought leadership content out there, and maybe one day you are not, maybe today you are not the exact thought leader that you want to be, but by continually putting that content out there, you will be the next thought leader in your field. And but that's how it happens. You got to keep putting it out there. So just keep going. Don't worry about what it's called or what it's not called. And keep, and the other way to become that thought leader is to comment and share, and write feedback for the people that are the thought leaders that you want to become, that you want to emulate.
That is an awesome thing to leave it on, Lauren. But I do have one more quick question for you, which
Yeah.
is, how do people talk to you more about thought leadership if they're interested?
Yeah, definitely. So shoot me a DM, you guys, or you can just email me, lauren@laurenperna.com. We would love to chat with you more about thought leadership. And, we help folks in all different ways, whether it's this long form content, or we can actually help you come up with your own thought leadership kind of content plan. So yeah, be sure to follow our page, and yeah, we'll keep on, we'll keep sharing this stuff for sure.
All right, I think we'll leave it there then.
All right, bye. Have a good weekend, guys.
Thanks, everyone.